Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Buddhikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Buddhikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So we read 34, I believe, didn't we? Krishna says, Arjuna says that he can't practice this yoga because it's hard to control the wind, like it's controlling the wind. We did that one. We're trying to figure that out. It's probably page 288. No, we can aim for that one. Right, Marcy? Okay. Yes, this whole thing of the five senses being out of control. Okay. All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 30th day of September 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 6 entitled Dhyana Yoga, text 35, page 288. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayang Samabaho Mahabaho Manondo Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tukunteya Vairagyena Chagrihyate. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Sankshayam Mahabaho Manodur Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tukunteya Vairagyena Chagrihyate. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodur Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena chagriyate. Parashakti. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodur Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena chagriyate. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodur Nigraham Kshalam Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena chagriyate. Kanai, you want to try? Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodur Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena chagriyate. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodur Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena chagriyate. Anyone else? Okay. I'll just read the synonyms myself. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, the personality of Godhead, said, Asankshayam, undoubtedly, Mahabaho, almighty armed one, Manaha, the mind, Durnigraham, difficult to curb, Chalam, flickering, Abhyasena, by practice, to but Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Vairagyena, by detachment, Cha also, Grihyate, can be soul controlled. Translation. Lord Sri Krishna said, Almighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Purport. The difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind, as expressed by Arjuna, is accepted by the personality of Godhead. But at the same time, he suggests that by practice and detachment it is possible. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe the strict rules and regulations of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the supersoul, restraining the senses and mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. The first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn vairagya. Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind in spirit. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. This is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit. This attachment is called parashenanubhuti, spiritual satisfaction. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. The more one eats while hungry, the more one feels satisfaction and strength. Similarly, by discharging of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. Hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind, and eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So Krishna is agreeing with Arjuna's complaint, which is that the mind is very flickering. Haribol, nice to see you again. Last two verses, Arjuna, after hearing about the practice of yoga, which involves going alone to a sacred place, sitting on a certain seat, not too high, not too low, practicing pranayama, control of the breath, being completely alone, celibate, and then working on gradually withdrawing the senses from all the objects of the senses, pratyahara, and then concentration and meditation and samadhi. There's 8 different stages. That's what it's called, Ashtanga Yoga. 8 limbs. So, not easy. And Arjuna says, after all of that explanation, he says in text 33, O Madhusudan, the system of yoga you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. This word chanchalatvat is there. Chanchala means moving here and there, never staying in one spot. It's actually a name for Lakshmi. Notice how Lakshmi never stays in one spot? Comes and goes, right? So Lakshmi means money. So then the next verse he uses the same word, chanchalam hi harekrishna, that the mind is very restless and very obstinate, and to control it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind, which obviously is impossible. So Krishna agrees, yes, it is difficult. Durnigraham means it's very difficult to control, and it's chalam, but it's possible through practice. He's encouraging Arjuna in this verse to try it anyway. And you'll see one of the reasons why is that nothing is ever lost. In the process of yoga, bhakti yoga, there's no loss or diminution. We learn that in the 2nd chapter. Neha bhikkamana shosti pratyavayam navidyate. He says that in this practice, abhikrama, there's no destruction and there's no loss. Now, where do you find that on the material plane? There's always the threat of loss, and ultimately everything is destroyed just by the force of time. You may be successful and get a good job and a house and your bank account and everything else, but in the end, you're separated from that. It's left here, and you're who knows where you go, because the first lesson is you never die. So you go into another situation. So sooner or later, everything material is destroyed, no matter how quote successful you are. But the wonderful thing about spiritual advancement is that there's no loss and there's no diminution. Even if you just do 1% this lifetime, 2%, and that's all you do, in the next lifetime you pick up with 3%. So Prabhupada says, once you start Krishna consciousness, you're going back to Godhead. You may take some lifetime, but there's no turning back. Because eventually, even if you fall away, and we've had many people who kind of deviated from Krishna consciousness, but many people, there's been now over 50 years of this movement, they come back near the end, and they say, when was I really happy? When I was with the devotees, So even in this lifetime, you see that Krishna consciousness is very powerful and addicting. So he's saying that there's no doubt, he uses the same word in both in the next verse also, but it's possible by the practice. So Prabhupada outlines that practice in the first paragraph. It is very difficult, observing solely in the senses of mind. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. So it's much more natural. It's focused on hearing about Krishna. Hearing and then repeating, chanting. The perfect distillation of all that is kirtan. When you hear Hare Krishna, and then you repeat Hare Krishna, and you're hearing. Now when you're chanting to yourself, you're simultaneously hearing and chanting. But it's the same basic process. And that is our basic process for focusing on Krishna. Now Kapila Dev, in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he describes this process, and he calls it the most easy process of yoga. Rijubir Yoga Margai. Literally means the easiest path of yoga. And that built around hearing from this important phrase, sadhu sangha, which is the famous satsang that is so common all over the country and everywhere. Wherever you find some Indian-born people, they like to come for satsang, which is sadhu sangha. Because that sangha with advanced spiritualists can inspire you to also lead that spiritual path, which is the meaning of human life. Human life is wasted, tragically, After all, try to understand the scenario now. We never die, and there's over 8 million species of life we can inhabit. Whenever you see a plant, you see a little animal or insect, those are the same spirit soul in that body that's in us. It's very, very minute, infinitesimal particle of consciousness, think of it like that, which spreads, the influence of the soul spreads throughout the body. That's why any part of our body, we feel a little, prick on your toe. Oh my God, what happened? Because you're aware. But we're only aware of this body. But that conscious element can spread throughout the whale's body, throughout the ant's body, and it's the same idea, So we've been through all that, Chances are we've gone way down, and now we've come up. The process is explained by Kapila Dev. You're gradually burning off all this bad karma that has gotten you into that lower body. And as soon as you're in a lower body than a human being, there's no karma. You're simply working by instinct. This is, the dog or a lion, we've all seen, and the kids on the Discovery Channel is running after the antelope. It catches the antelope. Oh, that poor antelope. Now it's going to die. And gets, But that's not a sin for the lion. That's his nature. There's no sin there. But if we go out and, hunting and shoot an antelope, that's very sinful, because we have the higher intelligence. So the human life is a great gift. There's even a nice phrase, verse, what is it? Uttishta jagata prapa viramna bodhata. Wake up, human beings, and recognize the great treasure you've been given, the human form of life. But it's a call. In other words, the Vedic wisdom calls us to utilize it for completing the evolution and breaking out of the round of birth and death entirely. What is that famous phrase you all know? Asato ma sadgamaya, tamasi ma jyotirgama, mrityu ma amritam gamaya. I've learned this before I even heard of Harekrishna. I was going to some yogi studio. And it says, so ma can mean two things. It can mean me, or it can mean don't. Avoid that. Do not. So if you're speaking to people, don't stay in the darkness, come to the light. Tamasi ma jyotirgama. Don't stay in the illusory asat, come to the sat. Asato ma sadgamaya. In other words, leave the temporary and come to the eternal reality. And don't stay in the world of death and come to the world of amrita. Amrita means nectar, but it means deathlessness. Amrita. So how to do that? For that we need this knowledge presented in books like the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna is giving us one system here, this yoga system of Ashtanga Yoga. But in the process of explaining it, he makes it very clear that the consciousness is meant to be fixed on me, not me, but on Krishna. He's saying, matparaha. Whatever yoga you're practicing here, it comes to the point of bhakti because it's focused on Krishna. So this is like a critical point now, because Arjuna represents us in some ways, and he's rejecting this process of Ashtanga Yoga. And so Prabhupada makes the point, because I'm hearing lectures all the time, so if even Arjuna rejected it, and to see how qualified he was. He was a personal friend of Krishna, he lived in a different age, previous age, he was a great Kshatriya, very virtuous, and he didn't think it was possible for him, then what to speak of us? So does that mean we can't practice yoga? No. It means that we have to practice the right kind of yoga for our age, and that is bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness. It's very practical. So what does Kapila Dev say about this yoga of hearing and chanting? So he starts out, this is the Sadhu Sangashtaka, you've heard it before. But I'll just summarize the first few verses. So he's basically saying that what keeps us bound here to birth and death is all of our attachments. He likens to very strong ropes, material attachments. Pasangam adaram pasham literally means the very strong ropes of material attachment. Pasangam. Now the word sangha is what we're looking for, sadhu sangha. So sangha is the key word. It means two things. It means attachment and it means association. And they're related because what you associate with, you become attached to, wherever you hang out, So there's a relationship. So he says, intelligent people know that in order to break those strong bonds of attachment to this world, one must transfer one's attachment from material things to sadhus.
to saintly devotees. Now, what are the qualities? Okay, suppose I say, I want to follow that instruction. Where are the sadhus? How do I recognize the sadhu? So 3 verses he gives explanation. They're very tolerant, they're very merciful, they're a friend of all. They have no enmity toward anyone, these sadhus. And how do they get that way? Through a very serious practice of bhakti yoga. Maya Ananyena, Kapila Deva is an incarnation of Krishna, so he uses the word me. Maya Ananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvandaye dridham. Dridham means very determined. You have to be determined because we're so conditioned. We're so habituated to sinking into the material frame of mind that it takes a real effort to stay on the course. And so, but that's the price that we have to pay. So, what is the result? Maya Ananyena bhaktim kurvandaye dridham. They practice bhakti to me with undeviating mind. And because of that attachment to me, they're able to give up any activity that is an impediment to bhakti, and even cut the bonds of attachment to friends and family if they're impediments to devotional service. That's the price you have to pay. So what do? Now it begins the idea of hearing and chanting. What does it say? Marashraya katam rishta shrinvanti katayanti cha. Shrinvanti and kantiya means hearing and chanting. They're always hearing and chanting delightful vibrations about me. Harekrishna mantra is the mother of all sweet vibrations, you know. But we have so many others. The Goswamis have rained down nectarian songs about Govinda to attract us to Krishna's pastimes in his form and everything like that. And that's what these books are. So they're hearing and chanting, and in this way they're enjoying life. So he says to his mother, and he says to her, because she complained, "Oh, I'm suffering so much," she took the role of a conditioned soul. They don't feel the pains of material life because their minds are absorbed in these wonderful vibrations about me and glorifying me. In other words, they're in yoga. They're, not feeling the suffering in this world. So he says, you have to search out these sadhus and associate with them, because by their association, you will negate all the contamination you've accrued by bad association in previous time. In other words, it's kind of like a cleansing process. It's a curative process. And then he gets to the verse that I've been aiming at, and that is, because Prabhupada's talking about the powerful devotional engagements which are focused on hearing and chanting. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkana rasayana katha tajoshanarashu abhavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktar anukramishati. By associating with such sadhus and hearing from them, you'll hear glorification of me. This is Kapila Dev speaking. Which is like mama virya bhavanti ritkana rasayana, which acts like a life-giving elixir, which is delightful for the ear and the heart, nourishing for the heart. And then by following this path of liberation from material birth and death, one will step by step develop faith in transcendental subjects, and rati, attraction to me, and finally bhakti, pure devotion, just by hearing and chanting like this. And then the next verse, which I won't go into detail, at the end he says, by thus following this, you'll develop your vairagya, because that's one of the things, right? Krishna says, vairagyena chagriyate. If you want to control the mind, you have to have two things. One is you have to develop your attraction to transcendental subject matters and Krishna, and you have to develop your detachment from matter. Now they go side by side, but there's often an effort to be made because we're so attached to material things. So that vairagya, it doesn't exactly mean renunciation. It means, as Prabhupada says, detachment. You can be in the middle of like Prabhupada, I would give the example, and when he came to New York is full of so many distracting things, and he would go down Times Square. This was when Times Square wasn't like it is today, it was just almost like a Disney adjunct. They cleaned it up. But in those days, when Prabhupada was there in the mid-60s, there was all kinds of, porn movies and things on the side. I mean, I used to go up and down Broadway. I didn't go into the movies. But it was like contaminating. It's just like you feel unclean just by walking in. Prabhupada wasn't affected. He was looking for somewhere to sell those books. He had these Bhagavatam books. He had no money. The only way he could make money is sell the books. So he made a few dollars here and there. But the point is, when you're spiritually strong, you can't be contaminated by the atmosphere, even if you're in the middle of Times Square or something. Rather, you help to purify. So that's the basis of our process of bhakti, is hearing and chanting. Prabhupada began this movement by going out in the park in New York, beating a drum and chanting Hare Krishna. And because it was the highlight of the hippie era, and people were interested in new things, you know. Maybe a large portion of his original audience were high on something, you know, LSD, marijuana, whatever. That's okay. They came around and they heard, you know, and a few of them came back to the storefront and heard the lecture and they became attracted. Yeah? He did. He did have books. No. He struggled for years in India to print 3 books, which comprised the first canto of the Bhagavad Purana. It was very difficult. He had hardly any money. He printed finally 1 book. He used that book to show to others to, you know, get donations to print the 2nd book. And he was proofreading the same thing. He was doing without, you know, it was either breakfast or buy the paper to print. One or the other. And he would give up the breakfast, you know, and the BTG was putting them back together. It was amazing what he was doing. So, and when he had those 3 books, he felt, oh, now I have something substantial. Now I can go to America. He didn't want to leave without them. So he came with a box of books, and he sold a couple of them to the captain of the ship he was on, you know. It was quite a saga. And those books are unique because he put so much into them. He didn't really know externally how much time he had, so he put the whole process in there. You know, if you just read that first canto, you get a lot, you know. So, yeah. So anyway, this verse is, he's agreeing with Arjuna that it's difficult, but he's encouraging him to try anyway. That is possible through detachment and through practice. And Prabhupada makes the point, we need to also cultivate detachment and practice, but it's feasible for us. We can actually practice yoga by this process of hearing and chanting and kirtan and so forth. And the main thing is fixing the mind on Krishna and developing detachment from the outside world. And that actually happens if you become Krishna conscious in the right way. All right, let's go on. Text 36. Asanyatatmana yogo dushprapa idime mati vashyatmana tu yatata sakyo vaptum upayataha. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement can hardly achieve success in self-realization. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Such a show of yoga may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. A Krishna conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without separate endeavor. But a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna conscious. So, it's difficult. This word unbridled, that's interesting because the mind is often, here it's compared to the wind. Sometimes it's compared to a bee going one flower to another, you know, flickering here and there. And sometimes to a wild horse. That's difficult to, you know, so that unbridled here. Bhavodbhava kleshika shashataha. Let's see if I can remember this verse. Bhavodbhava kleshika shashataha. Bhavodbhava kleshika shashataha. Forget the Sanskrit, but this is a verse in the Pajavali where he's praying that he's comparing his mind to a wild horse, and the wild horse is being whipped by all of the pains in this world. It whips, you know, the mind is suffering and anxiety and fear and all these different things. and as he runs down the dangerous path of the senses. So he's niyamyatam madhavame mano hayas. Hayas, the word for means horse. Please, you control my mind and tie it to the hitching post of your lotus feet with the strong bridle or ropes of service to your lotus feet. In other words, the only way to control that mind is by fixing it on Krishna. Because Krishna is all attractive. We'll learn in the next chapter, just in a few verses, after Arjuna, even Krishna is encouraging here, you should practice it. And so Arjuna says, well, what happens if I fail? He's not very hopeful, When I've wasted time, I left the battlefield, I left my job, I left no kingdom, and now I'm also failing in yoga. So then Krishna says, don't worry, you'll get, there's no loss or diminution, you'll get born in a yogi family, you'll get born in a Brahmin family like that. So altogether, Arjuna is not very hopeful, So at the end, Krishna encourages him. He says, Yogi nama visarveshan mogate antaratma. The greatest yogi is one who's always thinking of me with love and devotion in the heart and worshiping me with great faith. So Arjuna breathes a sigh of relief. Oh, Krishna is my best friend, I'm always thinking of him, In other words, he's already practicing yoga. But the next verse, the first verse of the seventh chapter, Krishna starts giving practical instruction how we can see Krishna even in our everyday life. When we understand that everything here is simply Krishna's energy. Just like you see in the morning when the sun comes up, we're always sitting here chanting, and the lights, the windows starting to get light, okay, the sun's coming up. You don't see the sun may be not even risen yet. But you understand the sun is there because of the light everywhere. So we should see everything as Krishna's energy. Not just the stuff in the temple, which is obviously dedicated to Krishna, but everywhere. Where do we not encounter earth, water, fire, air, and electricity and light? It's all everywhere. So the Krishna conscious person sees, oh, that's Krishna's energy. And then the next step is, how can I engage it in Krishna's service? Because as soon as you try to enjoy that energy, you forget Krishna. It's just like a burglar. He doesn't want to believe that the cops is looking over his shoulder. Right? He wants to forget about that. And hope that the proprietor isn't home. The burglar doesn't want to encounter it. So the thieves, they want to forget the real proprietor. But the devotees want to remember the real proprietor, Krishna, and out of love offer as much as possible to Krishna. Now that brings us once more to the subject of vairagya. Okay, so this is the definition given by Rupa Goswami of vairagya or detachment in yoga. It's called yukta vairagya. How to practice it. So he gives a little verse. He says, anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjata nirbandha krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. So this word yukta is like yoga. How to be detached in yoga. So he says, anasaktasya vishayan. Vishayan means objects of the senses, which we are constantly surrounded with. He says, without being attached to those objects of the senses, engaging them in Krishna's service as appropriate. Perfect example is foodstuffs. Every day, practically, somebody will give a bunch of foodstuff. You walk into the kitchen, now there's a whole bunch of flour, or sugar or whatever that they brought as an offering. So they want to do something for Krishna, so they bring this. They know it's be turned into prasadam. Now the cooks, they come in there, they're cooking. They're not cooking for themselves. They're taking this foodstuff and they're turning it into a nice preparation with Krishna in mind. Krishna will enjoy it. So this is yukta vairagya. Whereas, this everywhere else, people are cooking, but they're saying, oh, I'm going to cook this and eat it. Oh, I'll enjoy. You see? But the devotee thing, I'm going to cook this and Krishna will enjoy. And we'll take the remnants. So we also enjoy in that way. So anasakta, without attachment, of offering engaging where possible, the object of the senses, the things that we encounter. In this way, we get bound to Krishna, Krishna sambandhe. But we remain unbound from attachment to the things. You see? Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe. And this is yuktam vairagya. This is detachment in yoga. So they have to go together. The knowledge and detachment, jnana and vairagya. When you actually understand where everything comes from, and where and how it should be connected to Krishna, then you can remain detached from it. Or you're attached to it only because you want to offer it to Krishna, not because you want to enjoy it. That's how the real Vairagis live. And so they're happy. The whole world is Krishna's playground. You see him everywhere. The breeze is blowing, Krishna's blowing the breeze. Just like the gopis, they would see everything in relation to Krishna. They're at home and they're visualizing Krishna in the forest, and they say, oh, the cloud is coming, oh, that cloud is just rumbling up there, accompanying Krishna in his flute. You see? And that river is flowing, the Yamuna River, and the waves of the river are the arms, and it's hoping, when will the dust of Krishna's lotus feet blow into my waves? So in this way, they're seeing everything in relation to Krishna. And they're always blissful, and especially when they can offer their personal service to Krishna. So that's the wonderful process of bhakti yoga. It's natural. And eventually it becomes second nature. It's spontaneous. You don't want to forget Krishna. The most horrible thing is that somehow we wouldn't think of Krishna even for a moment. Whereas now, in our state, we have to chant and make sure, bring the mind back so we can get absorbed in Krishna. But the natural state of the living entity is to be Krishna conscious. Just like the hand. The natural state is to serve the body. It's in its natural, position. It doesn't give you any trouble, As soon as it's paralyzed or something, then it causes trouble. So we've stopped serving, so we were burdened on Krishna, so we have to go to a special place to reformation, and that's where we are, in the material world. Okay, so let's see. All right, so it's 7:56 now. I think we'll read a little bit from unless there's any questions, we'll read a little bit from the Upadeshamrita, which is a very important book. And this Upadeshamrita means the essence of all instruction or advice. There's only 11 verses, but they're very practical and important, written by Rupa Goswami, and of course commented on by Srila Prabhupada. Let's see. I think we're in verse 3 now. Okay. Here it is. Okay. Yeah, I'll just chant the first myself and then we'll go on. These are the 6 principles that are favorable for devotional service. He gives 6 in the first verse that are block devotional service or even destroy it. Atyahara payasascha pajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lauyancha shadvi bhakti pranashyati. Pranashya means to destroy. So overeating, over-collecting, working and aspiring for material things, very hard. Talking and hearing nonsense talk, not related to Krishna. Neglecting the activities, the regular activities of devotion, or doing them just to go through the motions, but not really, care. To associate, here back to Janasanga, and the Sangha is so important, to associate with non-devotees, and to be very greedy for material things. Those impede or destroy our devotional practice, so we have to try to curb those. On the positive side, utsahan nishtayaddaryat tattat karma pavartanat sangat tyagat sato vritte shadbir bhakti prasidhyati. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. 1, being enthusiastic. 2, endeavoring with confidence. 3, being patient. 4, acting according to the regular principles of hearing and chanting, remembering Krishna, etc. 5, abandoning the association of non-devotees, so positive and negative. You can see how important that was. Asatsanga tyaga. And 6, following in the footsteps of previous acharyas. An acharya is someone who knows the scriptural injunctions very thoroughly, lives by them, and teaches them to others. That's it, by example and precept. By example and precept. So Srila Prabhupada was a perfect acharya. He taught us and he showed us. Okay, we're in the middle of this purport. One should accept this opportunity of human life to return home back to Godhead very enthusiastically. Remember, that was the first principle, utsahan. Without enthusiasm, one cannot be successful. Even in the material world, one has to be very enthusiastic in his particular field of activity to become successful. A student, a businessman, an artist, or anyone else who wants success in his line must be enthusiastic. Similarly, one has to be very enthusiastic in devotional service. Enthusiasm means action, but action for whom? The answer is that one should always act for Krishna. Krishnarte akila cheshta. This is a line from a verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami, which means for all one's activities should be Krishna arte, for the sake of Krishna. In all phases of life, one has to perform devotional activities under the direction of the spiritual master in order to attain perfection in bhakti yoga. It is not that one has to confine or narrow one's activities. Krishna is all-pervading. Therefore, nothing is independent of Krishna. As Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matstani sarvabhutani nachaham teshavastataha. By me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, one has to make everything favorable for Krishna's service. For example, at present we're using a dictaphone. Prabhupada calls that dictating machine. He had a dictaphone. That was actually a brand name of a dictaphone, dictating machine. So he's dictating the very book with the dictating machine. The materialist who invented this machine intended it for businessmen or writers or mundane subject matters. He certainly never thought of using the dictaphone in God's service, but we're using this dictaphone to write Krishna conscious literature. Of course, the manufacturer of the dictaphone is wholly within the energy of Krishna. All the parts of the instrument, including the electronic functions, are made from different combinations and interactions of the 5 basic types of material energy: Bhumi, Jala, Agni, Vayu, and Akash. This simply means solid matter, liquids, radiant energy, gases, and space. The inventor used his brain to make this complicated machine, and his brain, as well as the ingredients, were supplied by Krishna. According to the statement of Krishna, Matstani Sarvabhutani, everything is depending on my energy. Thus the devotee can understand that since nothing is independent of Krishna's energy, everything should be dovetailed in his service. So this is an understanding upon which one kind of accepts a duty, because a duty is given by a higher power, right? You have a duty to, follow the law, So if once we accept that duty, this is the first step, and we should have the confidence that what begins as a duty ends up as a great joy and spontaneous activity. Just like, kirtan. It almost happens as you're watching. People are standing there, they may be chanting, maybe not. But if there's an exuberant, ecstatic kirtan going on, they often get drawn into it, and before long they're chanting and dancing and having a great time. Because it's awakening in the heart. It's a natural thing. So that goes for all of bhakti. Whatever we're doing, if we pay attention and we're conscious of Krishna as we do it, gradually becomes very blissful. Like I've been doing this apricot service for a few years now. We offer these organically grown, tree-ripened, dried apricots to Krishna every day. There's 3 of us who pitch in, me and Bart and Pavma. But I'm the one who makes up the little bags. You've seen me, And so we found that soaking them for like 40 minutes, not more, not less. This was all worked out by Jagannath. What was his name? Jagannath Tirtha. Yeah, he would do that, and he told me his system. So if we soak them for that long and everything, they come out more than heavenly, to my mind anyway. They're my favorite sweet. Not just because I offer them, but they're really good. So I've been doing it so long, it's like, it's a whole thing, I've got to soak, because I got to make up the packets at home, and I make big sure to bring them, and then I have to remember to soak them and everything. So it's not like, okay, I got to do this apricots again every day. It's not like that. It's like, oh, this is great, I'm going in the kitchen, I find the right pot, you're usually there. In other words, there's a certain amount of spontaneity to it. And these shlokas, that's like, for me, that's sense gratification. These shlokas, I memorized them 3 decades ago when Kushakrata translated. There's a devotee who learned Sanskrit. And they never get stale. You know, it's just descriptions of Krishna. He's got this beautiful curly hair and his, you know, wonderful forehead with the tilak on it, you know. It's like anytime you want, you can have this wonderful image of Krishna. So, but you know, when you're first starting, God, I don't know what that means. How do you chant that anyway? How do you pronounce that? You know, it's like a task. It's a austerity. But and just like every one of us at one point memorized that Hare Krishna mantra. We had to remember it. I mean, it didn't take long, but that was a gateway. But you get to the point where you never want to stop. You read the lives of the great, you know, devotees of Lord Chaitanya. They're going on for hours and hours. Can you imagine Haridas Thakur? He was Namacharya. He chanted for a minimum of 16 hours a day, and he never got tired. He's crying, he's, you know, reverberating, he's in ecstasy, because he's tasting with his pure consciousness that vibration of Krishna, which is non-different from Krishna. Just try to conceive of that. You know, God is so far away and remote, how can I ever reach him, you know? It's as simple as just chanting his name and hearing and understanding, oh, that's divine, that's divinity personified. You know, you can imagine how happy you can be. That wherever you want, you tap into this source of unlimited bliss. That's the faith that we have, and it's important to hear the lives of the great saints, you know, that they experience that. So what I'm saying is that in Krishna consciousness, in Ashtanga Yoga, it's practically inconceivable. Okay, I'm going to the Himalayas, you know, but how long can I stay there? You know, year after year after year. I mean, Radhanath Swami actually did it. He actually went as a young man, and he went and he meditated. Right, he writes it in his book, is having these experiences in the middle of the Ganges, meditating, isn't it? But he didn't stay there. You know, that wasn't the end point. You know, he had come down out of those mountains, you know, and came to Vrindavan, and eventually met Prabhupada. You know, it's very, very hard in this age to do what Krishna is describing. But this process, which is practically being described by Rupa Goswami, and in a few verses he'll describe exactly what I'm describing. How, he says, Sat Krishna Nama Charitari Satapya Vidya Pitta Patapta Rasanasya Narochikanu. That the holy name, form, qualities, pastimes of Krishna are naturally very sweet, but because we are suffering from the hepatitis of ignorance, it all tastes very bitter. Just like sweets will taste bitter if you have hepatitis and your skin is yellow. I had a serious case one time, and I can testify it's true. But if you keep, you know, that's apparently the cure, and one way of curing is through eating sugar candy. You know, eventually you'll taste sweet again, because you're cured from the disease. So we're all in a disease condition here. We're all in this disease of Maya and illusion, who we are and everything. And therefore our senses, our mind are not spontaneously attracted to Krishna. But by purifying them, the rest of the verse, but isn't it wonderful that by chanting the name anyway, even though it may be as an austerity, you know, eventually the disease is destroyed at the root, and the natural sweetness of the holy name and form becomes reawakened. And then, you know, you're a long way toward going back to Godhead. So that's what he's describing here. You have to be enthusiastic, but don't be impatient. You know, enthusiastic, confident, and patient in the matter of doing all of the processes, yet tat karma pravartanat. And meanwhile, don't associate with non-devotees who will take your mind away back into the old habits, and follow in the footsteps of the great devotees. This is the formula that he's giving. And then the next verse, which we won't get to tonight, involves relations between devotees. There's a bunch of verses about how to relate to devotees, which is so important. You know, without offense and cultivating friendship like that. Okay, we got to the point now, it's 8:09, so we have 1 minute, so I'll give you one nice little shloka with a poem attached. And that is, let's see, a very simple verse from the Krishna Karnamrita. Madoram madodam vapodasya vibho, madoram madodam vadanam madoram, madogandi madusmita metadaho, madoram 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 madoram. Madoram means sweet. Sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweet is still his face so fair, but his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. So this is how Bilvamangal Thakur, he sees Krishna in the altar. So we can practice that, because we're going to see him in a few minutes. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.